You are now listening.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
There we are. Gentlemen and the viewers around the world, welcome to another episode of the BMEA Podcast, Lifting Your Voices. We're back with the crew, missing Jerry. You may notice that, but we're here ready to get it going. So, as always, we want to start with the check-in. Mike, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? I'm good, man. I'm good. I've been back in the building with the kids, so that's been, an adjustment. But the weather's turning up, so, I'm feeling good, man. Feeling real good.
Kurt.
I'm good, man. I'm doing all right. And been working, grinding, and representing today.
See that, man? You got the gear on.
I got the what we call it?
Good.
Windbreakers. Windbreaker about to put on my mask. You know what I'm saying? This is what we do out here. I know people wonder where you get those from.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to come get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing good though. Doing good.
Excellent. I'm doing pretty well myself. I feel like it's been a while since we been on here. It's only been 2 weeks, but it's always good to reconvene, check in, talk deeper about the work. We have I think it's going to be an impactful show addressing mental health, our mental health of our students, as we head into Mental Health Awareness Month next month, which is just a couple days away. We have two great guests who are going to be joining us, Dr. Charles Curtis, who I'm going to bring on in just a moment, and also Mr. Joseph Hines II. And of course, we're going to talk about some hot topics. There's been a lot of things going on around the world that impacts us directly that we're going to talk about and get some perspective on. And of course, we're going to talk about the latest things at BMEA, upcoming events. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to Mike, who's going to introduce our first guest, and then we're going to bring him on.
All right. So the first guest, I do know him personally, man. Good friend and mentor to myself, Morehouse graduate, side chapter, legend. And he's the actual clinical and school psychologist in the DC area. And he's actually going to be our special guest speaker at the May 8th event for BMEA mental health event. So I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about himself. But without further ado, Dr. Charles Curtis.
Peace, family. I'm more than excited to be here. Hopefully, I'm coming through clearly. And my brother definitely gave a much better intro than I could have given myself. But I am a psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a school psychologist. But honestly, above all, I think of myself as being like an operator of liberation. My goal is to be present for people, especially us, especially our people, and to help us access our own best selves. And, not just in the rhetorical way, but actually so that we are feeling better, so that we are leaving better things behind us, and maybe even accessing some of the better things that the people who came before us meant for us. So I'm more than excited to be here, and I appreciate you brothers for having me be present with you all.
Yeah, man. We appreciate you for joining us. So talk a little bit about, because, especially as Black men, I don't think a lot of us go into psychology, man. So talk a little bit about your journey into even going into that field.
Honestly, my journey to psychology started with my mother. My mother's a psychologist. My mother went to the University of Virginia. She was in the first class of women at the University of Virginia, and also in the first actual incoming class of Black students. So Virginia had a Black person in this graduate program, a Black person in that graduate program. They let one in the door. But in 1970, they were essentially mandated to y'all got to tighten up. Brown versus Board was 16 years ago. Y'all got to stop it, cut it out. And my mom was in that first class. And she stayed at UVA for a while and got her doctorate in clinical psychology. So for me, talking, feeling, that was life. That's actually all I ever knew. So I realized, no lie, middle school. I like talking to people. People seem to like to come to me to talk about stuff sometimes. I do that. My mama happy. I like that. I'll do that. And that for real, like no lie, was the crux, the biggest piece, I think, of my, hey, I'll figure this out. I'll go that way. And I'm beyond thankful because I love it. I love what I do. I love talking to people. But above all, like I love us and I love being able to help folks. So being a healer is started for me with my mom. But again, and I'll probably keep going back here, our people need healers in general. We're real good at surviving. We are, like those of us here in this country, probably born of folks who survived the unimaginable. But that said, after you survive, like when do you thrive? When do you really be your best? Like, so we know we can get through it, but I don't think we have enough of us going into spaces to like help us maximize joy, maximize love, maximize our happiness. So that's really my push to psychology, in particular, into working like with young people, young boys especially, because especially as a Black man, like being happy is like on the lower end of what you're supposed to do. You don't go to jail, you don't get in no trouble, you watch your mouth, you don't say this to the police officer. We got a million things like you better do, but very few of those are related to you actually being happy. So I definitely find that that's a big part of why I'm in this particular field, so we can help ourselves find some real joy.
That's excellent because, like you said, in middle school, you had this idea of doing this in the future. That was like far removed from my mind, and even that sense of being happy. I remember something. Just a quick anecdote. I had a cousin who he used to tell me back then to smile in pictures when I was in like middle school, high school. I'm glad he did because I remember like you want to look tough and hard in pictures, and I just always be like, why do I want to do? Like, I used to think this in my head, but I had someone older that was literally like, man, dude, smile. You your mama got you braces, and you got a nice smile. Smile. So that's why I smile so much in my pictures, But I remember that was like odd to hear, and a lot of my friends was like, everyone would be hard in their pictures and look tough. So anyway, but continuing this on though, like how does that mindset and just what is like your role at the school? How do you bring that to life on a day-to-day basis working with youth in the school setting?
So it's really interesting. I've worked in a bunch of different settings, most of them public, but I've worked in day treatment. I've worked in like the last public option for special education before folks get sent somewhere. So, like severe like history of suspensions and expulsions, behavioral difficulties, emotional difficulties. I worked in charter schools. Currently, I work in a DC public school. My school is DCPS. It's all boys. It is non-selective, and it's beautiful. Like, I love it. I tell people all the time, I'm gonna retire from Ron Brown. I'm never going anywhere else. It's a gift. And mainly because we're working with a very true, if you will, intersection of young Black men. It isn't just young men who've experienced, the most school success. It's not the young brothers who are all about to get kicked out of school. That's not it. Like, we have the truest intersection. Essentially, anybody who wants to come can come. And for me, that's a gift. Like, it's a gift to really be able to work with that type of diversity. We hear a whole lot about like diversity and inclusion and so on. But usually those terms are for other folks and how they deal with us. So it's cool to be like in a diverse space where it's still us though. Like, it's actually diverse, but in a way that serves us. So anyway, like that's beautiful for me. But how I show up at Ron Brown, I am the psychologist, but I'm more than anything part of the culture and restorative efforts team. So in short, we're heavy on not suspending, we're heavy on not excluding, and we're heavy on being intentional about how do we disrupt this school to prison pipeline, but also how do we disrupt this norm of getting by? Right? Like working check to check, barely making it, kind of surviving, maybe functioning a little bit, maybe taking care of a couple of the kids you got well, but you struggle. How do we disrupt all of that? Like, and so for us, that really starts with really being intentional about how the young kings feel about themselves, how they see themselves, how they engage each other, and interestingly, how they engage the women that work with them. So for me, like, my job is very systematic, very program focused, individual as well, but we do a lot of whole group You know, in the PBIS world, it would be like tier 1. We do a lot of tier 1 intentional work that's meant to touch everybody. And it's all about stuff that honestly you probably wouldn't get until you got to a tier 3 space in most places, because we just don't have the time to be talking to everybody about their feelings. And that's not our world. Everybody gets to talk about their feelings every day, all the time at Ron Brown. And that's my team, and I love it. I really do.
Real quick, Dr. Curtis, first of all, I got to put this out there. So, you know, my name Curtis Lewis. I have 2 first names, 2 last names. I hate when people call me Dr. Curtis for the reason why there are real people who named Dr. Curtis. So I just want to put that out there because it's been people, it is one of my pet peeves. I hate Dr. Curtis Lewis, please. If you're going to put a Dr. Lewis. Anyway, hey, man, you know, I know you really love Ron Brown where you at, but has the Lord ever thought about putting Detroit on your heart? You gotta put it out there.
I'm going to tell you like this. I can't imagine being anywhere else, but it really is because there's not this type of intentionality around us in most places, right? Like you got to go to a charter school to do it. And my experiences with charter schools is that they don't have to move right. You know, at public school, you got to move right. You're not finna kick everybody out. They're not going to let you. Mm-hmm. Like the public school system gonna lean on you. At a charter school, maybe, but maybe not. There's a little different leeway in that world. So for me, like I really am thankful to be able to be in the DCPS space and do what I'm doing. Not just because DCPS, because make no mistake, I love DCPS, but DCPS got flaws too now. Like that's just what that is. Any of these systems that any of us work in have flaws. If they are not 100% around revolutionary pedagogy, they have flaws. Quick story, my daughter, her teacher is amazing, but my daughter's a DCPS student. They were in February in the 4th grade on Paul Revere for a whole month. A whole month, I lie to you not. I'm listening to it, like walking by, like what, like this can't be. One, it's February, like cut it out. Like how are they not learning about some black people? Like what's really going on? How is that a thing? But 2, like y'all really doing Paul Revere? Y'all not gonna center this whole American Revolution for these black kids and talk about the black people who fought with the British to get these colonists off their back. Y'all not gonna talk about these native people that fought with the British to get the colonists off their back. It's amazing to me how much flaw a system can have and not even realize. So for as much as I love where I am, I make no mistake. At the system level, there's plenty of flaw. But my operator work, like being in the moment, working with those young kings, like it's a gift, man. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
And so, you know, what's been the black cloud, or I'll say just a cloud in general over all of us this year has been COVID, right? So I wanted to kind of get your perspective on, you know, is male mental health month coming up. You guys have an all black boys school. How has COVID impacted you guys from your perspective?
We have had to really change the game and how we do social and emotional work. So much of who we are as an institution is about helping young men skill build their own character, skill build their own awareness. And for black boys in high school, a lot of that is helping them really like adjust their crowns. And I don't say that like rhetorically, like I mean it. Like on some level, you can't wear a crown with your head down. And you'd be surprised like how many young people, you all wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of the world would be surprised at how many young people internally, like their metaphorical head is down. Mm-hmm. They're sad. They don't really love themselves. Their posture is trash. And a lot of it is because it's exemplifying self-esteem that no one has built. No one has helped them develop. And so for us, and that being our intentional work, that's tough to do through a screen. It's tough to do virtually. So we have really had to change the game. One of the things that we were able to execute, we do community circles every day, and we do them virtually. But we have to split them up per grade levels. So we find ourselves like on my team, on the Cultural Restorative Efforts team, we literally are 9 to 12 running circles for the whole school. But the premise is y'all need it. Like you need room to get affirmed. You need room to shout each other out. You need room to be able to talk about something that is premised on helping you be your best, but you also need room just to be like a kid, right? Like to not be on the hook for something, to not owe anybody anything. Like you need some of that time. So we figured out ways to do it, but it's intense and short. So from 9 to 12, anything that anybody looking for from me, it can't happen because I got to be here, making that happen. So I think it's made our days longer, COVID has. And it's definitely made it tougher to catch some of the young brothers that brother who would have cut class, that brother who he never would have came anyway. It's tough to catch him because now you got to do a home visit in a pandemic, like you have to. Because I can't just go catch you in the bathroom where I know you are. Ain't no bathroom. Your bathroom in your house. So I think in that way, like it's made it tougher. The brothers who are disengaged, catching them it's tougher, but it's possible, Like so, I also think one thing we taking from COVID is you got to be creative out here. Like I don't think we'll ever go back to business as usual. I think we got some new skills, some new tools in the tool belt, if you will, on how to connect, on ways that can help folks plug in. Because I've definitely been surprised. A lot of brothers are flourishing. But I think some of that is because they're able to manage these demands a little different. They're able to find some competency, like some feelings of mastery. So I definitely think we've had to adjust, but we've learned some things too.
Yeah, I think that's great because what you just said, I think it has revealed in some students that independence of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my work done on my time. For some students, that works very well, and it's a lot different than that traditional sitting in the seat listening to, So I think you are dead on when you say like we've learned some things have been revealed, and I think it's gonna be on us as educators and educational leaders to not rush back to, things as usual. Like what have we learned? How do we build upon this? Because I do think there's a lot of just data, if you will, just information that's been revealed to us. So I think the onus is on us to figure out how do we actually use it to better empower our learners.
For sure.
Yeah, that creativity part too. I think that like a lot of struggles that I've seen from educators has really just been around like not having to try something else, try something new, try something different. Like they wanted it to be a certain way so badly that they were kind of stuck in this space of like helplessness. And for me in my role, what had the silver lining is that I've been able to show them how they are exemplifying the same things our dependent learners do. Helplessness, right? Forgetfulness, right? Like you're stressed out, but you don't take none of that empathy that you want me to have for you on your students, right? So we can sit here and talk about, how you're stressed and the things you need, and you need some more, you need like some leniency, you need a second chance, but then you failing all these kids in the same breath. So like I said, I think the creativity point was important, but also just us realizing that it doesn't have to be the way it was. That doesn't mean the way we were doing it doesn't mean we were doing it right. That's just the way we were doing it. And I think that it's opened this up for us to really being able to kind of like think hard about what it needs to be moving forward.
I think this experience has for sure reopened our room to get into like pedagogy and really like honor pedagogy as a real place of oppression or push. Like you really can duplicate the exact stuff that you claim to be trying to dismantle in your like haze mentality pedagogy. Like, yo, if you don't get this, and if I don't get it by this time, and if it don't look this way, and if it don't follow this format, you getting a 0. Like, fam, I can't come back from a 0. A 0 is gonna fade my grade. Like, what do you think that's gonna do to my morale in your class? And nothing is being proven by those things you just named in the way of content mastery. Only thing that's really being proven is I'm compliant. Like that's really what's on your mind right now in the pandemic. And I think this is highlighting how problematic that is. That idea that honestly most of us were probably schooled in ourselves. That's probably how we were taught. But I think the pandemic has definitely highlighted for us how your pedagogy is absolutely curriculum. It is absolutely culture. And the three can't be separated.
No, absolutely. And this is a good time to bring on our second guest, His role in the restorative practices and justice has been vital in his space, in the educational space, that work that he does, and as well as administrator. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Joseph introduce, tell the listeners more about himself. Brother Hines, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing today?
I'm well, man. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you've done, all that jazz.
All that jazz. First, peace to the ancestors. Without them, we can't do this work. It's really difficult to stand up as an educator in this pandemic and show up every day. I'm a native Detroiter, and so my work that I've been in for the last 10 plus years revolves around education, revolves around restorative practices, and I'm currently a school principal. And so I have the unique opportunity to support culture and instructional practices and move it forward to education for liberation. But my baby, my gem, my heart is restorative practices because I had the experiences as a young person in a very African-centered school. Shout out to Catherine C. Blackwell. I've been in Black school my whole life. I've had 10 plus Black male educators, probably 15 before college. So my experience around restorative practices, around community, and anchoring ourselves to make sure we're good, making sure we're well, and supporting the whole student has been a place of privilege because I come from educators. And so it's exciting for me to be at a school director's position, to be able to create that same joy, that same pride that I had, that I got at Morehouse with, both of you all. I'm kind of in between. One's older, one's younger. We won't say who's older, who's younger. We'll let the audience decide that. But, I think I'm pretty young.
You might want to be quiet. You might want to leave that one alone.
It's the pandemic. I'm giving y'all real.
We talk about that mental health. We talk about that.
Yeah, but I think growing my hair is a place of love. I remember being teased and taunted as a kid, right? So this is radical and it's intentional, and I have to be okay with my hair doesn't I don't got the smooth beard like Doc or Chris. Like I got, it curls. Let me own it. It curls. And in curling, I gotta walk into the world confident because that's a part of kids' identity. And when you're really trying to be restorative, you're really trying to you gotta practice self-love. And so this is a practice. It's challenging, but I'm at a different place than I was as a kid. And so I think that's kind of all right, let me just let it hang out. Y'all see me where I was bald. Now let me grow my hair out.
No, that's beautiful, man. Talk a little bit more about this restorative practices in the school. For some of our listeners who might not be familiar, just say a little bit about how it's different from the traditional sense, as brief as you can. And then what does it mean in this space during this pandemic where our kids are virtual? What does restorative justice look like in a virtual sense also, if you could?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of folks use RJ to RP interchangeably. Restorative justice gets its roots from the courthouse in the system to support this victim offender type of healing, right? I think when you morph into restorative practices, it doesn't remove RJ. It just talks about being a practitioner, making sure that this is an active process, and then making sure we put the onus on the proactive measures, the 80%, right? And at the center of it is building relationships and community. And I think Dr. Curtis, he says something that's really amazing. I don't quite remember it, but it's about our educational experience can be replicated because of force of habit. It's so easy to say, this is how Black folks educate or disciplinary kids. So I got to pull you to the side. And pulling you to the side, I can do two things. When we think about the non-effects, I can make you go to joy or bring you back down to something worse. I can re-ingrain the same type of police jargon with my tone. I just look Black. And we got to be okay with that's not okay. So I think for me, bringing restorative justice and restorative practice into the schools means I got to be okay with doing the hard work because RP ain't fair. Because it's not about you. It's about the community. And so if you're thinking it's it's when I mean fair, I mean it's not going to always feel bubbly. It's not always going to feel warm. Sometimes it gets really difficult because you're building relationships. And I think as educators, we have to continue to evolve to make sure we don't treat students as if they're just students and not a person first. And that their emotion and the baggage that they experience, none of us know what it's like to go to school in a pandemic. So there's an excellence that they displayed that I can quickly dismiss because I am bothered by your timeliness. You know, I'm annoyed because your tone wasn't pleasant. None of us, sometimes it's performative. I get on Zoom, you gotta be like, I gotta wake up. But if I had the luxury, sometimes I might be like, I'm tired. Let me show up whole. Because if I show up whole, then the community can wrap my arms around me. So I hope that helped answer your question. Dr. Curtis, what do you think about it?
I think you're spot on. I think that we hear about restorative justice. We hear about, like I said, diversity and inclusion. You know, now we're hearing about anti-racism. And quite frankly, all these terms in a vacuum are whack. Like none of them mean anything in a vacuum. They only mean something when your general, I shouldn't say only, they mean the most when your general premise is one of whole healing, is one of liberation, is one of really working with the entire person. One of my sincere, current frustrations is with anti-racism. So you hear it all the time. You hear it all over the place. Anti-racism is a hammer. If I'm building a house, of course I got to have a hammer. You need it. Absolutely. But I also can't walk around like, hey, I got this hammer. You're welcome. Come on, son. That's not enough. It's cool, but it's not enough. And my issue with hearing it the way we hear it now is people say, hey, I got this hammer. I'm good. Hey, I got this hammer. I'm doing the right thing. No, you're barely scratching the surface with that hammer. That is insufficient. I'm glad you have it. Yes, you need it, but you also need this. You also need that. You also need this blueprint. You need this skill saw. You need this other thing over here. I think that we have to be honest with ourselves and recognize that restorative work, restorative efforts it's a broad, rich reality. It cannot simply be anti-racism, diversity and inclusion. Sure, it has to be all those things. But if we're not thinking about who we're working for and how we liberate them, and more to the point, how we help them liberate themselves. And I use liberation specifically to say we have to focus on helping you access your destiny. So Joe, for example, mentioned honoring the ancestors as we step in. The majority of us are really operating in our classrooms from a tradition of radical thinking. We aren't thinking loose and just shooting from the hip. But unfortunately, a lot of our verbiage is trapped in the now. So this person is an ally, that person is an ally. Y'all, real allies gave up their whole house for enslaved people to come stay in. They put their life on the line. That's real allyship. You liking my post is not allyship. We give out, these cookies way too loosely and easily. But I think it speaks to us really missing the big picture. And the big picture is it's a lot of work to be done. Your work got to be yours, mine got to be mine. And with that team effort, we actually are going to touch liberation and revolution, sustainable change.
I don't know if you saw, we got a hashtag going, move Detroit Dr. Curtis. So that's, our PR team was already on it. So
I love it.
Just want you to know we got that in the works.
We're not playing no games. I know you laughing, but we serious out here. So we're gonna send you a ticket just to come visit. Just come visit.
I got to. But all jokes aside, that this level of comradeship is important. Because if I don't know what y'all are doing, then I miss a lot of gems. There are things that you all are doing that I just don't know of, but they would absolutely serve the young kings I work with. And having that community, actual community where we share, we connect, we give out tips to each other. That's how our young people end up connected. That's how when somebody from Detroit need to come to DC, they have a place to be and they have places to work. They have change to make with each other. These are all skills from the virtual world. I think that we should definitely be taken away from this Ponderosa outside connection.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to just ask this quick question here from you both briefly on it. I know with our time we talk about mental health from the adult perspective. We concern ourselves with the mental health of educators and just professionals. But when it comes to young people, and we kind of been touched on this throughout, I guess for maybe a parent listening is there things that you recommend like a parent can do, or even if a young person is listening, just to tend to their own mental health in this virtual hybrid setting? We hear about restorative practices. Can that be aided outside of the schoolhouse or supported? Let me know what you think about that. I want to hear some advice. I have a teenage daughter who, I think struggles with this, especially being virtual. So I'm really curious what you all think about that.
Yeah. I can hop in there first. I think there's a couple things, very tangible solutions that we can support students' mental health. I'm a big believer in proverbs and affirmations. This comes from my childhood experience where whatever experience I had inside school, my father or church, etc., was countering it with some type of word or positive affirmation, right? It's subtle, but it's small. But I'm pretty sure if I would have tapped Dr. Lewis, elementary school kids, the first class, about what are his favorite sayings, they'll roll them off the tongue because they get embedded in your psyche. Because you start to say, that helped motivate me 10 years later. I get that lesson later. I think it's also an opportunity to listen first. We say it, but listening requires me to be okay if a nail breaks while I'm building the home of relationship with my child, and I still got to build it. So it goes rocky. My child has a temper tantrum. My child is acting in a way that is age appropriate. I'm not going to say acting out of order, age appropriate. Like age appropriate behavior sometimes is not acknowledged enough. So we kind of shift kids to adulthood and then be upset when they display age appropriate behavior. And I think there's an integrity and a restorative nature to say, let me really step back. Is what you're doing out of order? Or is what you're doing out of alignment with principle? So how do I push you back to the principle of what I'm trying to teach you? And that only can happen restoratively. Because if we want our students to, go to school to get good grades, that's not really the deep principle. I want you to go to school to evolve, to understand who you are, to be in rooms and speak power, to be able to have a lifestyle where you have things to keep, right? That comes with acquiring grades, whether good and or bad or indifferent. It requires an understanding what the actual system is, which has never been reconstructed, but that's another conversation. So I think that's some work that parents can do. I think that are tangible and small, but it takes some humility. Shout out to Ndugu and Zinga. You got to be humble as a parent. I'm not a parent. I'm an uncle. I'm a mentor. I got some mentor boys that tried my humility because I was like, man, y'all are really making me sit back and consider, is there something else to go? Is there a higher level? And I think that's the key factor with restorative practices, walking in a lens of humility.
I'm with you. And in that humility, we can also recognize tomorrow, like the sun gonna rise tomorrow as well. I do not have to do this exact thing today, right? So you don't have to learn how to watch your tone all today in this one moment. It don't have to happen that way. Now, baby, you can't talk to me like that now. We're not gonna do too much. But I also know you don't have to be perfectly contrite and totally responsive to what I'm saying to you right now in this moment. That's not how that works. I can't necessarily come back from doing too much right now in that moment. You a kid. I'm grown. So me expecting, like Joe just shared, me expecting for you to do stuff I can't do is only an exercise in my own vanity. It in no way actually honors you or serves you. But instead, if I'm honoring you, I can recognize, me and you family, we got each other forever. My best move here is to be speaking power to you, be speaking joy to you. Baby, I know you can do better than that. Baby, I know we don't have to engage like that. We don't need that. So I'm gonna step away because something's off. And I'm gonna go over here, and when I come back, we're gonna figure this out. But that's very different than me going to 100, cussing you smooth out, talking to you all crazy, and then we come back and hug it out, right? Sure, we can do that, but we can skip all that, and I can just, hey, you know what? You're doing a lot. Y'all know what comes to mind. Y'all remember the scene from Paid in Full when Calvin was talking to Ace and he hit him with it. You know what? You're funny and all that, but you know what? I'm a step. He was hot. That man was livid but he somehow he knew what it was going to be later on. Now, I'm not encouraging us to like rob and shoot people. I'm only saying in as far as we know what's going on, we got to be the adult. You know what? I'm going to back up. I'm going to come over here and me and you can come back together. In short, it's okay to let your kid have that one. You got that. You got that one. Yeah. We going to come back to it, but you got that one.
Yeah. Because you don't lose anything. You lose nothing. Your ego, if you're not clearing your ego lose some stuff. Because sometimes we can get in that ego debate. I've had that moment with teachers. It's like, let me chill. I'm having a real conversation with the educator. They're competent. I'm missing something. And I know that human nature in me can come out. But I don't lose anything by coming back another day. Actually, I can show them a different way and say, you know, and people might call this extra, because when you get into restorative justice practice, you talk about effective statements. And when you get into effective statements, like, you know, I feel this, I feel that. It's not that. But to be clear on effective statements, you got to have an understanding of words and what those words and intentions do to shift folks. So if I can come to you and say, you know, my disposition is not at a place where I really can have this conversation honorably, I'm going to come back later. I'm giving you an understanding that what is going on is not unimportant. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I can't maintain a certain level of character and disposition with you in this moment where I can hear you. And if I can't hear you, it becomes me saying I'm big. You know, I call it the Matilda syndrome. You know, I'm big, you're small, I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think there are some type of like DNA things that happen within Black spaces, you know, and we joke about them. You know, we have those laughs like, well, yeah, that happened to me. But at the root of it is just a, you know, replication of some other oppressive standards. We have to like evolve to consider back to some things that we lost. And losing those things, we kind of like, you know, practice this art of Sankofa. Let me just come back and sit. What's going on? And in that art of Sankofa, going back to consider, we had this moment yesterday. Oh, you remembered. Now you're adding value to a kid's life. You're adding value to the life source, because I'm not saying what you feel and believe doesn't matter. And you're kind of nurturing the inner revolutionary. I mean, we have students, I think Curtis, back in the day, I was his dean. We had students who came like, yo, we got to talk to y'all. Knock on the door. Middle of a meeting. We got issues. That type of freedom for Black kids in a school setting to know they have access to the principal, have access to senior leadership, allows me to walk into a board meeting and say, no, I'm not shrinking up because you feel I don't deserve to be here. It allows you to walk into certain spaces that traditionally were never designed for you, and you're still a number. You're still number one, number two, number three. We're still counting how many folks have come in the door. At some point, we won't. And so I think there's power in restorative practice, there's power in mental health to really get granular and say, you know what? Let me just sit back and consider what you have to say. Because I'll miss, there's no revolution that does not have youth present in it, leading it, and committing to it. And we got to be okay with sometimes the schooling experience is a revolution within itself. We're building an institution within an institution that's not really liberated. To be a restorative school, to be culturally responsive, to say I'm committed to certain principles and tenets, I have to be clear of where I'm working and operating in, and that this is still in its infancy. And so when you're building an institution, it's hard work. The vision is not always going to be yours. It's going to take changes. And so when I look at a restorative practice, I can go into a conversation like, I'm going to hit these points, and none of them happen. And I think sometimes I take slack as you know, you let them get over. No, I'm not. When you get liberated and you remove ego, it's not, they ain't getting over. The lesson gonna happen. I'm clear about that. If I drive fast and I don't get no speeding tickets, there'll come a day I'll get one.
Let me tell y'all something. Hines about to start preaching. He on fire.
Could I add something on this real quick? My partner, I'm gonna figure out a way to add this into the chat too. My partner wrote this article. He's a professor at American, but interestingly, he studies straight up and down like 1960s, 70s era prison rebellions, and specifically like he looks at Panthers. So in short, like he is a whole researcher, professor on like Panthers and specifically Black radicalism and the exploration of it. But he did this interview with Daruba bin Wahai, who was one of the Panther 21. This quote, it really highlights what you were just talking about, Joe. One of the key lessons to be learned from this history is that revolution is illegal. Revolution is criminalized because it necessarily entails destroying law. Understanding this means that contemporary activists, that would be us, cannot expect a government that facilitates the coercive dispossession of economically impoverished communities of color across the nation and the world to then facilitate, legitimate, and reward radical struggles to transform, undermine, and abolish the state that is current. So in short, in being a restorative operator, we have to know that we are operating against the exact institutions that employ us. Like, we have to know it. Like, you are literally a Navy SEAL, a special warfare operator at war against your own country too. So the people that actually employ you and send you to do the work, not only do you have to do that work, you also got to work against them too. And the truth is, that is a realization all of us have to have. And when we have that realization, right, like that we are the tip of the spear both ways, it makes it much easier for us to say, but we can't be fighting each other then. I definitely can't handle conflicts with the young people I'm responsible for because the conflicts is out there, not in here. We got enough out there. But I'm gonna post that article too. But that just, it was right on with you. Like, we work in institutions that are problematic.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. So like Dr. Daniel Black, who's a mentor, I call him Baba. Shout out to all the professors in the AUC. Shout out to Ndugu Nzinga. He did this lesson on excellence, right? And he said a proverb, or I guess like a tenet of excellence. Two things. He says, one, excellence requires discomfort. I think restorative practices and mental health work at its root requires a level of discomfort because you got to be okay to dig in, get really, really like messy. Like, as I'm saying, if I pray for the rain, I got to be okay with the mud. You can't get one without the other. I think the second point, restorative practices within itself, RJ within itself, it demands what other people find optional. Now, though Dr. Black, Baba, he used that about excellence, I think restorative practices says, this ain't optional. I can't skip over relationships with kids and get the content and then be like, yo, I'm teaching. I'm highly effective. You ain't doing nothing. Insert explicit. That's the root of it. And when you look at your favorite professors, teachers going from preschool through college, they're the ones who are unapologetically committed to relationships and community. There was a way they were able to tap in and look at their expertise and not diminish the content, not reduce it or saturate it down to a point where it's Luke, but to a point where here's still the excellence, here's still the high support, and I'm gonna still understand who you are and be okay with the immaturity, be okay with the maturity, be okay with that pendulum that shifts, right? And so I think that's really what, like, you know, RP and mental health within itself, right? Sometimes, like, when you're dealing with mental health, some people's like, I don't know how to deal with that. It's optional for them. Well, as we Black in America, there's mental health things that happen daily by the second. So we walk into this space, right? Like, and I think sometimes we don't consider how much strength our kids have and how much we can really, really push that to the forefront when they're struggling. I ain't giving no young Black kid resilience. They got that in them. I'm not God. Let's really get clear, y'all. Yeah. You know, I think sometimes we lose track of that. Like, oh, I gotta build this. No, you don't. They got that with you.
Look, dope. Now I knew bringing y'all two on at the same time, y'all was gonna get to this.
I was like, can y'all say something for the event, bro? Like, say something.
Sorry.
This is good stuff. Good advertisement for sure. Because I knew it. I knew myself. You know, it's a good combination. We only got an hour. You know, they know we only got an hour. They go right.
And you kept saying, like, if you could briefly state this, I'm like, he keeps saying briefly. That don't really operate in our strategy. But I'm gonna hear you though.
You heard me say briefly, right? Chris, you heard me say brief, right? I said, yeah, just briefly give us a little something. But look, hey, I love you too, brothers. You know I do. And this ties well into the event, man. Talk a little bit about the event before we close out. Let people know what they can expect briefly. Because
wait. I'm about to say, hold on. 20 seconds. I'm gonna mute y'all. we gotta pay a fee after the 50 minutes.
Go ahead, Joe.
All right, cool. No. So we have an event coming up on May 8th from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Registration is still open. You are registered through our website, BMEAofMichigan.org/events. You'll go to our Eventbrite. We have some dynamic folks coming on to talk about where do we go for here in mental health and me. We have attorney Nicole Johnson. We have, of course, my good brother extraordinaire, Dr. Charles Curtis. And we also have Dr. Keena, who are all going to talk about this intersection of mental health, education, and what we're currently doing and how do we move forward. So please come, sign up, join us. It's not too early in the morning. You can have a cup of coffee, do some chores, and still get out and go shopping, do whatever rituals, that's another word, but we'll get there on next week, that you need to do on Saturday.
Excellent. And Dr. Charles Curtis, before you exit, just give us a quick, brief, 20-second intro of what you're going to be dropping on them at the event. What can they expect to hear?
We're going to be talking about how to systematize love. Honestly, we don't get to talk about love enough in the education space. So we will talk about not just like being lovers, but actually systematizing it. How can I ritualize and systematize my own delivery of love for these people? Not just the young people either, but for these people that I'm responsible to.
That's good.
Excellent.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank y'all for joining us on the show. Appreciate y'all back.
Hey, Dr. Curtis, we're going to get you that flight.
Hey, this your room right here. I'm in your guest room right now, Dr. Curtis. Let's
do it. I'm ready.
Hey, Mike, you call Quentin and get him on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
peace.
Man, that was good stuff.
Yeah.
Man, y'all Qs can talk.
That's the restorative cues,
man. Y'all get together. It's like, geez.
We ain't have nothing to drink. Ain't no bar.
I'm like, y'all sober.
We could have been all day, but yeah,
good stuff. I'm looking, it got me pumped out and thinking about that love piece. Systematizing love. That's real. I love it. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well,
so we close out. Just a couple reminders as always. We'll be back in 2 weeks. That'll be May 13th right here on Facebook Live, 7 p.m. Like we said, the mental health quarterly event is May 8th. You can register right now. We still have some spots available. Go to our website, BMEAofMichigan.org/events. You'll be linked right to our Eventbrite page where you can sign up. Any last minute comments, Curtis, Mike?
Hey, can I say this? Can we, in the next 2 weeks, can we not have a video we watching of somebody, some body cam? I just want a 2 week break. That's what I'm asking for. That's all, like a 2 week break. I feel like every 2 weeks we got something to talk about if we wanted to, but that's what I'm praying for. Anyway.
Yeah, man. Mental health, man. Only thing I want to say, man, I hope everybody is intentional about some self-care. Don't wait to take care of yourself, one. And two, just he talked about systemizing love, loving yourself, man. I hope everyone finds something that they love to do and incorporate that to the everyday, because all we have is the day that's given to us. So that's all I got.
All right, y'all. On that note, we are out. We will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.